Welcome back. Now, you've heard the president. Even if the military does not meet the deadline, the important thing is to quash the group so the fight continues. Ambassador Joe Keshi disagrees with laying down deadlines, but he's confident the fight against the terror group can be won.
Okay, Ambassador, you've been with us on this program on several occasions, so we've talked about security and Boko Haram's insurgency. So, with the recent spate of bombings in the country, it's really, important to ask at this time if we really are winning the war, knowing that, we're just a few weeks to the deadline given by the president.
Well, until we get to the deadline, I don't think we have any reasons to doubt the military or its ability to crush Boko Haram. I think in support of them, we should believe that they are on their way to meeting the deadline. But I think what we should be more worried about is the spate of bombings all over the place. And if you recall, I think in one of the times I came in here, and the military had increased its operations, I did say that we should expect that there will be new phases to the war before the end of the war itself. And so when I find the military chiefs saying that the bombings are as a result of frustration by Boko Haram, I think they got it wrong. What we are witnessing is a shift of tactics. If they've been dislodged militarily and they are not ready to give up, they've adopted a new phase of the war, which is to do sporadic bombings all over the place. And that will require us to probably invest more in intelligence in order to counter the bombings.
Well, when you say that Boko Haram has changed its tactics and its strategies, is this because, the military is indeed winning the war?
To some extent, but it's also a change of tactics to say, well, look, if we can't confront you guys frontally, we could as well do something else, which now goes back to how they started, a kind of guerrilla, movement operation. So we are likely to probably see that more of that before the end of the war itself. So we're probably winning at the battlefield, but we're not winning the peace yet.
Well, this is quite unsettling, that you should say this, because considering just a few weeks back, the United States had offered military personnel to come help the Nigerian army with military intelligence on Boko Haram. It's the same promises that we got, at the time that the Chibok girls were also abducted last year. We had, military personnel coming from the US, France, the UK, and so on, all of them promising to help with intelligence and so on, and nothing really changed. So what would be different this time?
Well, I don't know if you saw the report in Daily Trust. When you read that report, it's even more unsettling to use unstable to use your words. Because the impression one gets is that even the multilateral, force that should have been heavily involved in the war is not yet ready to move or has not even moved. So they are not yet involved. For the first time, the way the report was written, for Daily Trust to even give some credit to Jonathan for hiring mercenaries, and now says that maybe they should do the same, just shows you that there are still some serious challenges involved in this, in this war. But I think, for me, I think it just shows one or two things. That it's easier when you're outside condemning those inside. And one of those things we've not learned to do in this country, which is done in a number of other countries, when you are running for an office and you are contesting for a post like that of the presidency, it's almost, I think it's almost constitutional that the president in power or the security and every other agencies of government periodically updates the presidential candidates. So in our case, they should have been briefing President Buhari before even the election. In case he wins, which he did at the end of the day, he was already at home with the whole situation, rather than being briefed after. So now he's in some difficulties or challenges because some of the things they said, look, we got the promise that, oh, once APC wins the election, this is a great general who, in fact, some said almost single-handedly fought the Chadian soldiers. The war will be over. So I think this is a lesson we should begin to learn to prepare ourselves for this position of leadership and to ensure that those coming to office have an in-depth knowledge before they even ascend the throne, quote and unquote. I don't know whether you saw the Hillary Clinton at the 11-hour grilling by the House, by the Congress. What came out was that this lady, even if she becomes president today, she is at home neat and dry with all the issues involved, internationally, domestically, and the rest of it. That's the kind of leadership we should be looking forward to. That's how we must begin to prepare our leaders. That fine, it's okay to look for slogans to win an election, but quietly you must begin to educate yourself, enlighten yourself, brief yourself, even get people in the system to help you, so that you don't make that mistake of saying, look, we will end this war 2 months after I assume office. You've changed it to December, and we are so close to December. There's no sign at all that we're going to win the peace. We will win the door, but the peace, I'm not too sure yet.
But is it possible to really track these insurgents? I know that, when the war initially started, Boko Haram was thought to have made a home in Sambisa forest. But the Nigerian military has succeeded in regaining these, cities and villages that were taken over by Boko Haram, including Sambisa forest. So is it possible to really track where Boko Haram is?
No, I think it is. Again, I did say on one occasion that events like this have a circle, and it's going to run its full circle. There's nothing we can do about it. We can shorten the circle, we can prolong the circle, but definitely it will run its circle. And I think I need to make this point that the circle in which you require massive military operation is probably getting less and less with what the military has done so far. But the sporadic bombings and other things will continue for a while. And this is where we need to invest more in intelligence and the rest of it.
And can we win the war against the insurgents without the use of mercenaries? As the Chief of Air Staff said, well, he's positive that, the deadline will be achievable. And he says Nigeria will do this without the use of mercenaries. Can we win this war without the use of mercenaries?
The Nigerian military is purely conventional military. So they really don't have the experience of fighting, guerrillas. Again, let me remind you that when the military took part in the Sierra Leonean operation, in spite of the successes achieved by the Nigerian military, at some point the Sierra Leonean military had to engage mercenaries to help because of the spread of the terror. No, well, they were not called terrorists at that time. They were called rebels, at that time. So it's possible that some aspect of the war, we don't have the expertise. And if we can get these mercenaries who, by the way, I saw them in operation in Sierra Leone, and I saw them with when they brought in the equipment, particularly the helicopters, they use in fighting, If we can get them, as the Jonathan team did, and get them to help us in the last stage of the battle, I think the most important thing is for us to win the war itself. Dislodge the terrorists completely from where they are. They must still have some basis between the Sambesi forest and, some parts of Cameroon and Chadian territory. So I guess that's where we should focus. And once they are dislodged, the rest, winning the peace, becomes even more, easier.
I'd like to take us back to, the financier of Boko Haram. Now, if one person is sponsoring Boko Haram, he's certainly getting his weapons from other countries, which are selling weapons. So can the Nigerian government actually query some of these countries thought to be selling weapons to rebel groups?
Depending on what he has told them. depending on what he has told them.
Could he have told them he's negotiating for the government? Or, I mean, he's
No,
going over
no.
Exactly.
Look, bear in mind that today there's so much arms and ammunition all over the world that you can actually, if you've got the money, you can raise an army. If you've got the money, you can raise an army. The difficulty is how to transport these things to where where you need them. And if you can buy people along the way, like we experienced again in Sierra Leone and Liberia, where the arms were coming from Libya. They were going through Burkina Faso to Ivory Coast, from Ivory Coast into Liberia, and from Liberia to Sierra Leone. So just look at the long distance from Libya. Why did it succeed? Because they had collaborators in Burkina Faso, they had collaborators in Ivory Coast before it could get into, So it's not impossible. And by the way, some of these collaborators were military officers serving in Burkina Faso military and in the Ivorian military. So it's not impossible that whatever route this was also coming from, that it was also, you find, the involvement of elements of the military.
And finally, Ambassador, is it possible that Boko Haram is being influenced from the outside?
I've never actually thought so. I just think, and I've said, this for me is internally generated. I won't even be surprised that maybe the initial, weapons they use or they've been using, that they got it from the Nigerian military. It's not impossible. And these things happen. So we should bear that in mind. I believe it is internally generated, and by God's grace, we're going to end it here internally too.
That's the program this week. Many thanks for watching. Hey, start a conversation on any of the addresses on our social media platforms at Diplomatic Chan and at facebook.com/diplomatic channel. I am Amarachi Ubani. I'll see you next time.